It's episode 4 of the Processing Podcast with Mary and Sophie, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We have a fantastic show on tap today. We'll open by sharing how our respective support systems played a part in us pursuing our education and careers. Then we'll dive into our college application experiences, the schools we applied to, did get into, and so on. Then we'll pick our New Year's resolutions, things we'll have to live by in 2022. And last but not least, an update on Sophie's wedding planning. She tried on dresses for the first time. Did she or did she not say yes to the dress?
The suspense is absolutely killing me. It should be killing you guys too.
We'll find out at the end of the episode. And this is the first ever episode coming to you live in person in Southern California, as I'm home visiting California for the holidays.
It's so much better recording in person. I love actually being able to talk to your face and to see you, and just being able to go back and forth much more naturally than over Zoom is just, it's so much better.
And luckily for us, we got to ring in the new year together.
Yeah.
And had an intimate experience because we didn't socialize or go out because of the current state of COVID-19. And it forced us to get very creative in how we spent our entire night.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the more tame New Year's I've ever experienced. Felt very adult, just staying in and watching the countdown with you, me, and my fiance Darren, but we made the most of it. I think we had to get creative. There's only 750 square feet in here to work with. Yeah. But we did a lot of fun things. Mary had the great idea for each of us to write down 4 things that we could do while inside the apartment, and kind of like draw them out from a hat. They included a drink making contest, doing each other's makeup. I suggested that we should prank call people from high school, but that one was ultimately vetoed.
Which we've done before, embarrassingly enough.
I don't know. I always think that's the funniest thing, just how awkward it ends up being, but I'm in the end, it's probably better we didn't.
Now, 6 years out of high school, I have, other than the people I talk to on a regular basis, I don't have anyone's numbers from high school.
Really?
So I've gotten to that point because I've gotten in 3 new phones since then, that prank calling people from high school is a lot more challenging.
I still have people from middle school, so we could have dove really deep.
That was my attempted excuse, but she still wanted to do it. But it's pretty funny because at this point you can get away with it. Like, those people won't remember you. But it was so much fun. I think a lot of them are rooted in competition, the things that I decided on, or the suggestions I had for us to do. And the drink making contest was a lot of fun because you had so many options in how we can ingredients and so on. So her fiance picked, what was the first one? Flying saucer.
Yeah, so what we had him do was we had him just pick a random name for a drink that we would invent. So the name that he picked was the Flying Saucer, and we had to create a drink that embodied that name. And I definitely won that one.
Totally lost. I won the second one, but my idea was, okay, sauce. So I loaded up the cup with chocolate sauce and just tried to make it like a creamy, just
I see where you were going. I see where you were going with it. And it was so close, but the drink was so strong. I took a sip of it. It was like,
it wasn't great. It was like rum and milk and creamer. It wasn't my best work, but you interpreted it by the...
I interpreted it like the alien side of it. So I went with like it was a passion fruit juice, so it was like kind of a lime green, and then I think I added like champagne and maybe like a dash of vodka and some like sparkling club soda to make it really fizzy and kind of, fun. Like, I don't know why I associate that with aliens, like fizziness. I'm not sure why. But
it's interesting.
I don't know. But it was delicious, so.
In my argument in the contest, once her fiance was trying the drinks, was the drink she made could have gone with anything. If you said anything tropical, like
That's true.
It was a generic drink. You can argue mine too, like it was just chocolate sauce. But that's just me still being competitive and wanting to justify why mine should have won. But let's get into it. How our first segment, how are support systems influenced and played a part in us pursuing our education and careers? And it's something that I think about frequently when I look to the people that have made it in the broadcasting industry, or just really successful people, or really rich people. How much support did it take for you to get there versus how much time and energy and your work ethic did you put in to make it happen?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic because, in my opinion, I mean, obviously, you do have those crazy success stories where people don't have any support at all and they make it to the top because they were just willing to grind and they were so passionate about what they were doing. But I think more often than not, success really does require quite a bit of support and resources from those around you. So what I mean by support is really guidance. When you are growing up and you're trying to make sense of the world around you, you need somebody there who has been through it all before you to guide you and to set you on a path that will ultimately lead to success, whether that be anything from learning how to apply to colleges to even opening a bank account. These are things that obviously are not naturally ingrained in our brains. Like, we need someone to teach those things to us. And then resources. Unfortunately, we live in a world where, nothing is free. And we need some sort of monetary support. We need, books to go to school. We need clothes on our backs to go to school. We need obviously tuition for college eventually. These are all things that require resources in order to pursue success. So I do think it's really important that young people have those two things to be successful. And a lot of times that does come from the traditional nuclear family, but I don't think it necessarily needs to come from, two parents in order for a child to be successful. I think that type of support and guidance could come from another family member or a mentor or a very dedicated teacher. But ultimately, I think it helps greatly to have both of those two things in your life. And I was fortunate enough to receive both support and resources from my two parents, particularly in the area of professional guidance, because my mom, she didn't finish college, but she did go to college. And she had a very professional job while she was in college. She's now a bookkeeper. She basically does the job of an accountant. I say she's an accountant. She's not a CPA, but she could be because she's so good at her job. And my dad didn't go to college, but he was always very professionally motivated. He, started multiple companies on his own. So he's an entrepreneur and he's always been very professionally motivated. And they were very good at having me pick a direction for myself at a very young age. I mentioned this in a couple episodes back, but my parents actually sat me down when I was a freshman in high school, and they said, "All right, Sophie, what do you want to do for the rest of your life?" And I was like, I don't know, I guess I'm good at math, and I also like art, and it was...
And I want to be an astronaut?
Yeah, and being famous, like Miley Cyrus would be really cool. I don't know. But what's great about having parental guidance is or even a mentor, like I said, or a teacher, they can kind of, decipher what a young person is saying. Like, okay, you're saying you're good at math. You're saying you're artistic. What realistically in the real world could we apply those skills to? And so I had my parents' insight to tell me, advertising and marketing might be a really great field for you because it requires a lot of research, which, it is math related in some ways, like statistics and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it also can be very creative. So I had their guidance there. And the great thing about that is, for me, I'm very lucky that it ended up working out in the end. But even if it doesn't work out in the end, like let's say I decided in the end I wanted to go into banking or something like that, at least I was set on a path to start building momentum for myself to where, I would be going to college, I'd be starting a career for myself, and if I did decide to change my careers at some point, at least I had built up my savings a little bit and gained some experience in a workplace where I wasn't just starting from scratch. So, there's pros and cons to picking a career path at such a young age, but I do think it creates a level of momentum that ultimately can really help in being successful in the end.
Absolutely. And I love the perspective you have because I feel like you can see the correlation between your parents, your upbringing, and how that has translated to the life you're living now and just your perspective and what you find important and what you value. And it was a bit of a different story from my side of things, though I feel like we ended up on a similar path. It took a little bit more of doing things on my own to figure it out because my parents weren't in unison and didn't see the world similar at all. My mom didn't go to college. She more focuses on the now of she was growing up. She was focused on just parenting me and being my mom and loving me. And when I ask her to buy me something, that was like her focus. Like, oh, she wants this week. Her scope of thinking was a lot more small and in the now. Whereas my dad was very future and provided a lot of guidance for, okay, this is how I want you to live your life differently than mine. Or similar to mine, because he chose to go to school out of state, similar to I did. And both of those contrasts were a little bit hard to navigate because my mom then, once I did express interest to go to college, my mom explained how for her what worked was the blue collar lifestyle. She landed a job at Boeing in Seal Beach and was able to work her way up from there until she was eventually laid off when a bunch of layoffs were happening. I think around like 2009, something like that. And that was hard to hear because that didn't sound appealing to me. But I wanted to make my mom proud, and I wanted her guidance. Like, she's my mom. So on the flip side of things, my dad spent a lot of time bringing me around college campuses. I spent a lot of time at USC, at University of Southern California, UCLA, and soaking in that college experience. And my dad's intention behind that, me unknowingly, just like, oh, this is fun. We're going to a couple college football games, basketball games. But his intention was bring her around that environment so she could soak it in and see what it's all about and be attracted to that student lifestyle to then have the desire to invest in your future and be successful by getting a degree. And it was a unique experience to navigate, without a doubt. My mom, eventually I realized that's not the route I wanted to go with what she was saying by just going to working, and all of that makes sense. Her life experiences make sense to why that was her guidance, and she didn't focus too much on the future because that's not how she was raised to focus, and that's not the path that she chose. But we got to that conclusion in a different way, but my dad did then take on the full financial burden of sending me to college and set me up to have faith in that process. Because another difference is my mom really works hard to ensure she has no debt ever. Like, that's something that's a way that she identifies success for herself. Like, I'm not in debt. I'm not in credit card debt. I'm paying off my car, my mortgage, everything. That's what she works towards. Whereas my dad is like, you're going to be in debt, but it's worth it because your future is worth investing in. Like, your degree is worth it. Like, spend $25,000 on 2 years of college or a year of college, not a car. That was kind of his guidance. So it was a contrasting style of parenting, but eventually I followed what my dad said, and then beyond that, all he did was set me up with what I wanted to do. Beyond that, it was all, okay, what do I want to do with the opportunity to go to college? And that's where I think I played a big part in creating my success. But I couldn't have done it. Like you said, the importance of having guidance from someone, a mentor, anyone, and that was my dad in the end.
Yeah. And I mean, as a kid, I'm sure it was difficult to determine, which of my parents is right here. Like, do I hustle and, really work really hard to get to where I want to be, and not go to college? Or, am I going into a career that requires a degree, and do I need to go to college, and do I need to take on that financial burden of 4 years of tuition? And I think in your case, you knew, because you were so passionate about what field you wanted to go into, that you knew you wanted to take that latter route of, yes, I need to go to college, I need to pursue a degree in order to advance in my field. I say it was difficult to choose because it might have been difficult for other kids who weren't as sure about their career path, but you did seem very sure at a pretty young age of what you wanted to do.
Yeah, when I was researching journalism, there weren't really many options without a degree to make it far in the business. So that helped. And me knowing what I wanted to do, and that's just something, a part of my identity is being career driven, and that's where I want to know people that are so successful. Are you career driven, or did things just pan out for you? I'm sure there's a little bit of everything of the people that have had success, but it's awesome to see two people from two different backgrounds, how we both made success for ourselves. We define success differently, I'm sure, but we both are in a position, despite any adversity or positives in our upbringing.
Yeah, and our upbringings were different, but in the end, like I said before, your support didn't necessarily look like the traditional nuclear family, like two parents on the same page giving the same exact advice. Mine was like that, but in the end, we both did receive that support that we needed to then take that support and create a career for ourselves. So I do think that, as I said before, it could come in multiple different shapes and forms.
Absolutely. And be confident in what you want, and don't seek approval from other people is one thing that was crucial in that process. Because when you're applying for colleges and you're not getting the excitement level from one parent, or maybe any parent in another instance, then it's deflating, and it's an emotional realization to get to. Like, what makes me happy and what I find successful isn't what my parent or someone that I want their approval from, they're not going to see it that way. So that was one thing that really helped me in that process, was do not seek validation from other people in certain instances, because otherwise I would have been like, well, what's the point of going and putting all the work that goes into getting into college if one of my parents or someone I love so dearly isn't going to share that same excitement. But in the end, I learned in my situation that once my mom, in this case, my mom saw me have success, she was like, awesome, like that's what you should have done. She just didn't know anything different than what she did.
And that is a perfect segue into our next segment that actually, Mary, you came up with this idea, reliving our experiences applying to college. And it's so funny, when you brought up this idea for this segment, it brought back so many memories of just pure stress for me. I remember when we were freshmen, sophomores, juniors in high school, we were hot off the heels of the Great Recession. And I was just being told left and right, there's no jobs out there. College is so hard to apply to. If you don't get a good job, you're going to be poor for the rest of your life.
Oh my gosh, the statistics of these are the amount of college students that graduated in whatever year that aren't employed.
Yes.
And I was like,
the unemployment rates were skyrocketing, and it was genuinely scary for especially as a teenager. You don't have a full grasp on the real world yet, so you're just being told these horror stories. And I really wanted to make sure that I set myself up really, really good in high school, and got really good grades and got really great SAT scores. So I just remember being constantly so stressed that if I didn't do well in high school, I wouldn't get into a good college and I'd be doomed for the rest of my life. So,
but that's a perfect example of our perspective when we're in grade school, how like small our perspective is, and it blows these thoughts out of proportion, and it really makes for an unhealthy, like unenjoyable experience when you're in grade school. And an even more relatable example, like even just drama when you're younger, it's like this situation right now is so detrimental to my life, and that's just how it was.
It was bad. There was a point where, like, my hair was falling out, and I was like, like a mentally unstable 15-year-old because I was so stressed. But looking back now, I mean, I feel like it genuinely would have worked out if I had gotten, one or two more B's than I had gotten in high school. But, I began preparing very, very quickly for college when I was in high school. I think I started taking my first SAT prep course freshman year. I took 3 summer courses in total. So while everybody was at the beach, I was with Dr. Arnold, our principal, preparing for the SAT, doing workbooks. My mom was checking in, making sure I did my workbooks every day. I did 2 PSATs, 1 ACT prep test. I did 1 Princeton review, which was extremely difficult. I don't even think I finished that test during the allotted time period. And then in the end, I ended up taking 2 SATs and combining those scores to get the score I got in the end. And then, that was just the SATs. Then I applied to 11 different colleges because I was so petrified that I wouldn't get in anywhere. I think I genuinely convinced myself at one point that I wouldn't get in anywhere. So I applied to 11 different schools, and you remember those applications. They're long.
Essays, and they're all pretty individual because the questions are different. So you can't give one resume and just deal it out. You have to individualize each application, and it's stressful.
Yeah, and I also did workshops for the essays as well.
Yeah.
It was, looking back, I don't think I've ever been as stressed out as I was in high school. Ironically, I don't think I've worked that hard, especially just waking up at the time you wake up for high school. I woke up at 6:30 in the morning, did a whole day of school, then had song practice or ASB after school, then homework, then SAT prep and applying to colleges. I was nonstop from 6:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night, and then did the whole thing over again the next day for 4 years. Looking back, I'm glad that I did it because it did set me up for a really great position and a great scholarship at Chapman. But I don't think that the stress that I put myself through was necessarily worth it. I think I would have loved for my future self to have been able to come back and tell young Sophie, everything's gonna be okay. Like, you're not gonna be destitute on the streets.
So you would have liked your mindset during that process to be a little bit less intense, but you still would have done the things you did to prepare.
I think I would have, but more of the knowledge. I think I did a lot of that preparation out of fear. Fear of failure and fear of, setting myself up for failure for the rest of my life. I think I would have, if I could do it again with the knowledge that I have now, I'd be doing all of those things out of excitement for what's ahead, and more so focusing on, what really excites me and what I'm passionate about, so I can focus a little more on creating a direction for myself. Because I didn't really settle on marketing until probably sophomore or junior year of college, when I really started thinking about what I would enjoy doing for the rest of my life. Because before that, I was just so focused on get good grades, do well, rather than what lights you up.
Quality
inside.
of life you wanted to have and the happiness you wanted to achieve, rather than this is what will make me the most successfal, like in terms of buying a house and having money to live and survive.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair. I have a very differing experience, but bring me through the colleges with all of that preparation and the standard you set your life to. Like, how did that translate to what colleges you applied to and so forth?
Yeah, I wanted to stay in state. I had just a lot of things holding me to Southern California, so I did focus a lot of my applications on Southern California schools. But, to be honest. I knew that I wanted to do something that would most likely be in the communication school, so I did a lot of research on which schools had good communication programs, and then I just kind of went for the prestigious names like USC, UCLA, UCSB, but I did want to apply to at least one out-of-state school to give myself the option and to be able to explore what it would be like to go to school outside of California, and that was the University of Oregon, which actually in the end it was difficult to pass up on to decide to stay local. And looking back, I think it would have been good for me to go out of state. But I really did love my experience at Chapman. It set me up with an incredible network. I wouldn't have the job I have today without the network I made at Chapman. And Chapman also, the thing that ultimately was the deciding factor, well, two things. The first thing was the scholarship I got there. It was a really great scholarship that they gave me. And the second thing was that strategic and corporate communication major. There was nothing else like it at the time. And it was just the perfect blend of communication, business, and marketing, all within the communication school. So a lot of times you would have to apply, or actually at the time I would have had to apply to Dodge, which is a very, very, very competitive film school at Chapman for the advertising major. And I ended up applying for the advertising minor in the end, and getting into that school for my minor. But I would have had to apply to Dodge right out the gate, which would have been way, way more competitive. So SCC, Strategic and Corporate Comms, was a big draw for me.
Okay, so the getting into a school that you would be proud of, like a big name school, and then the opportunity once you got there in communications was important to you. So that in turn, okay, so now what schools, or you kind of listed a couple, but what schools did you apply to and then didn't get into given all of that?
So like I said, I applied to 11. The two that I did not get into was UCLA and USC. And, you know, it was disappointing. Especially because USC had always been a big draw for me, especially because I had heard so many incredible things about their communications programs, and the network that you can build at USC is just humongous.
Yeah, that was, like I said before, I grew up going to USC events because my dad worked there for a period of time, and the Annenberg School of Journalism was like top tier.
Yes.
And there's ESPN broadcasters, one of the individuals from our college that went to from our high school that went to USC, I saw a video on his social media one time of an ESPN sports analyst in their School of Journalism in the confines of that building just hanging out and talking. And it's like, what an incredible way to network and school in general.
And the culture too, you know, being able to go to USC football games and all the tailgates and just being part of the school culture in general. It looked like so much fun, and I really would have been super excited to go there. But in the end, like I said, I really do think everything worked out for the best. At Chapman, at a smaller school, you have a little bit more freedom to grow and, you know, write your own ticket. And Chapman, I noticed while USC does have a really ginormous network, I feel like Chapman's network is a little bit more easy to access because it's just so localized.
Absolutely.
And alumni at Chapman are so involved. Like my CEO, Rebecca, she is a Chapman alum and also an Alpha Phi alum. And she's super involved with Chapman. Our agency actually does multiple projects for them. And so she was one of, you know, the first alumni I met, and luckily got a job from her, which was super great. And I'm speaking from my own experience. I don't know what it's like to network within USC's network, but I just wonder if it would be as accessible as Chapman's network is.
Because it's so competitive. There's so many people that are there that are chasing the same things you want. So, quick question, since USC's culture and it being a Power 5 school was attractive to you in some ways socially and just experience-wise, was Chapman having Greek life at all a draw, or is that something that a sorority you got involved in just because you happened to be there? Like, was that would you have been happy there if they didn't have any Greek life? for that social matter?
Greek life did matter to me. I especially,
I think it did for a lot of people from the high school we came from. Not saying that's isolated. A lot of high schoolers love the idea of being able to make friends and be social. But yeah, I would say that's something a lot of people from our high school wanted. It was Greek life.
Yeah. I would say that was actually, if I found out that a school I was looking at didn't have Greek life, I almost immediately checked it off. I said, okay, I don't want to be part of it. Because being part of an organization of women right off the bat, like right as soon as you come to the school, was really attractive to me. Because I had always been in organizations. I'd been in song. I'd been in multiple other social organizations in high school, and also ASB. So being part of a social group really was attractive to me. And again, I was always thinking of the future, so I had always heard what an advantage it was to have that network when you begin applying, and I didn't know how exactly it would work out, but it was actually funny. It was one of the first things I ever talked to Rebecca about, was that we were both in Alpha Phi.
Yeah.
And, it's not like, I wouldn't say it creates a crazy advantage, but it does create connection right off the bat, and relatability to the person that you're interviewing with. So,
I have a very similar experience. My current first boss out of college with my current job, went to Iowa State. So that, I don't know how much that played a part in me choosing that TV station, but such a relatable experience. Like on my phone interview, half of the conversation had to do with life at Iowa State and what changed in the journalism program since he was there. And
it
so
creates
forth.
connection right off the bat. And I do think I've heard from a lot of alum in the past that that's kind of a lot of alums' way of giving back, is giving back to their school or giving back to their sorority or fraternity, helping those other alums that come out succeed. That's their way of giving back to their organizations. So it definitely is a big advantage, and Greek life was a must for me, for sure.
So Chapman was the fit. Did you... it checked all the boxes and you're happy with where you landed? Yeah,
I wouldn't change a thing. Looking back again, I really just wish I could tell. The only thing I would change is just the stress level.
What you emotionally endured to get there. Which is a big part. That was one of the key things I wanted to touch on, was the emotions throughout that process. Because a lot of people can feel like they're alone in that struggle and that emotional turmoil, but it really does feel like the most important decision you're going to have to make, and in a lot of ways it is.
It does. It definitely defines the rest of your life. I wouldn't say that if I had picked something else I wouldn't be successful. It just would have set me on a completely different path. It does define your life, what university you choose.
And for me, there are so many differences in our college application process, because one, right off the bat, I only applied to schools out of state because I was really set on being away from home and going to experience something other than Southern California. That has some positives rooted in it, and I think some negatives. I think I wasn't given the dynamic of my family and the slight dysfunction that may have been in my life for a long period of time. I wanted to separate from myself from it and just start new and just build a life for myself. But I also wanted to experience something other than my home city, my hometown. At that time, like you mentioned, just so much stress we put on ourselves as young 15, 16, 17-year-olds. And one thing for me was the population in Southern California was so overwhelming for me. A place like USC that I went to all the time, I was turned off by that college. I mean, I'm not saying that I was in a position to go there, but when I was younger and I was considering, like, since my dad worked there, I would have had free tuition, and I was looking at, is this somewhere I want to go? Even with that, I, at that time, was turned off to the university because it was surrounded by so many places and people. It was, I mean, USC's in downtown Los Angeles. So with that, it really shaped all the colleges I applied to. I applied to state big schools, Power 5 schools that were not integrated in a city. I think the only one I did applied to that was in a city was Boston University. Other than that, they were all in the middle of nowhere, in a way, college towns. And that was like, yes, I want to be in a college town like it's a movie. I don't want to have to drive anywhere. I want to be able to walk from my dorm, my apartment, to the other side of campus and not have to worry about any travel or anything like that.
So, just a question. Was part of your reasoning of wanting to not be in a city and to be in a smaller town, was that because you knew broadcasting was going to be such a competitive industry that you wanted to be able to stand out more? Or
No, that had a part in why I picked Iowa State over Michigan State and so forth, but initially that had nothing to do with it. I just liked that environment. I love that college experience. That's the best way to put it. That experience is what I wanted, and that's what I eventually ended up getting. So that was important. I mentioned a Power 5 school. That was the biggest thing. I applied to one school that wasn't in a Power 5 conference. Power 5 like Pac-12, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, ACC, etc. Only one wasn't, and it was a D1 hockey school that had won many recent championships. So Clarkson University. Other than that, that was important because of sports broadcasting opportunities. I wanted to have the best of the best sports to talk about and to be around, and branching off of that, going to a top journalism school in the country.
Yeah.
So those were key things for me. Going to a top journalism school, getting that college experience that you can't get in a big city, at least at the time that's the way I saw it, and going to a Power 5 school. So I ended up applying to BU, Boston University, Syracuse, Michigan State, Iowa State, Clarkson, Oregon, and Alabama. A big part for me, too, was Greek life. At that time, looking in my position now, I would have been totally fine without Greek life. None of the friends I ended up having were a part of Greek life. It was because I played lacrosse, my journalism school, and beyond that. None of my friendships really came in my sorority. In fact, it really took me away from the involvement I needed to have in going to sporting events and working for the athletic communications department. So with all that being said, those were like the contingencies I had on what I wanted to do, where I wanted to end up. But to get to that point was a little different for me. I wasn't super academically driven or successful. What drove me was involvement and being a part of a group or the sport, like showing that I'm committed outside of academics. I'm not saying I was a D, F student, but I was like a B, C student. Committing myself academically wasn't my strong suit. So what I did to make myself stand out was being involved in ASB, student government, playing lacrosse, being involved in other groups like Guam, Griffins with a Mission, which was was it prevent bullying? I'm kind of forgetting. It's been so long.
It was to spread like just tolerance in general and kindness. Really was Griffins with a Mission. That's what that was.
Yeah, and those things were all just I wanted my list of involvement to triple the amount of classes I took, and that's what I think ended up translating to college for me. Like academically it was important, but in my industry it's all about experience. So it's good that it aligns that way for me, because my strong, and that's why I love my career, is because academically that wasn't the weight wasn't on that. It's your commitment and your desire to perfect your on-air abilities, your sports knowledge, and so forth. So
that's like, that really goes all the way back to what I was saying before about having the guidance to really know what you want to do, because the sooner you know what you want to do, especially even as soon as high school, you can really start saying, okay, I don't need to focus that much in this area. I need to
Yeah.
focus more in this area, rather than trying to, stretch yourself super thin and just be great everywhere. You knew that it was more important for you to be really involved and to, be able to connect with people and get experience. Whereas for me, I was like really focused on academics because I figured the profession I was going into or the major I'd be applying to would really be looking at that. So it always comes back to having the insight and the guidance from other people to really set yourself on a path for success very early. I think it's a priceless gift to be able to have that.
Absolutely. And emotionally during that time, I was excited. I think I was dealing a lot in my home life that made me even more excited because it meant that this isn't something I'll have to bear when I go off to college. Looking back, a little bit of the opposite. You said that you would have been open to leaving and maybe it could have been a positive experience to you. But for me, looking back, I think I could have been happy being closer to home, but I still am happy with the decisions I made. I guess I should rephrase that. I don't think it would have been as detrimental for me to not go out of state, and I still would have been able to be an individual, independent in everything that I wanted here in California, but it was a better fit. So once I got into the colleges I got into, Michigan State, Iowa State, Clarkson, Oregon, and Alabama. I knew Oregon was too close to home, funny enough. And Alabama, I seriously considered because I was interested in Greek life. And Greek life was so big there. And you get caught up in certain things when you're young. And I got caught up in what I envisioned for myself. But I don't think that environment or that I wouldn't have had too much to relate to in a state or a college in the South, just based on my background and where I come from, and I'm sure any situation anyone could thrive if you want to, but I'm happy I chose somewhere in the Midwest. My goal was East Coast. That was hurtful when I didn't get into the East Coast schools. I shed plenty of tears because that was everything I wanted.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember I remember knowing which letters were the reject, because it's a small letter.
Yeah.
It's a tiny letter. You're this isn't a good letter.
In the movies, they make it look like they're all the same letter. No, you get a packet if you get into that university.
Yeah, I remember that day USC came in and it was this tiny little, and plus I had seen other
standard envelope.
Well, yeah, and I had seen other students get accepted with these ginormous packages, and I was like, this is not a good letter. And it is heartbreaking when you put in so much effort and you start envisioning your life in a certain school, and then
when I got the email from BU, I think a lot of mine was, I saw a lot of it through email first, and I saw the email. I went over to my aunt, who I was just near at the time, and I was like, I didn't get into BU, and I started crying, and she hugged me, and it was nothing that tore me down. Luckily, like I had the perspective that wasn't the end of the world, but. For me personally, side note, East Coast is somewhere I've kind of been chasing because that's where I want to work one day. And so anyways, you start considering all the colleges, right? That's what I'm getting at. You're looking at, okay, these are the ones you have the option to. For me, a lot of it was in my control. My dad didn't interject his opinion, but he was supportive and guided me. So at this time, I'm deciding, and I say Michigan State is the school. I'm going to Michigan State. I love everything about it. It's a Big Ten school. And the most talented athletes have come out of Michigan State. The sports scene is everything I want. Incredible journalism school, and that school is going to make me happy. Being in Lansing, Michigan, on wear your shirt to where you went to college day. At high school, I wore Michigan State. I went to Michigan State events to meet other people that also are going to Michigan State.
Like, hey guys, we're going to be together.
Yes, where do you think, like, do you want to live together? Like, literally planning things out. And in the end, the conversation, a very difficult conversation had to be had with my dad was, in a nutshell, let's consider what our options are, and let's also make a decision. At the time when I was picking Michigan State, everything was good. But then once the finances started getting hashed out a little bit deeper, he was like, let's really, really think about if Michigan State is everything you want, because here's what is going to have to go into it. So that was a difficult conversation, but I was like, I always felt supported. So I never felt like this is the end of the world. I knew that my dad was going to do everything he could to get me somewhere I wanted to go. So Iowa State was revisited. None of the colleges none of the colleges I applied to were like, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I loved all of them. I just wanted to go to a Power 5 school out of state. So once Iowa State was brought up in Ames, Iowa, which back then I was like, awesome. Now I know, like, Ames, Iowa is in the middle of nowhere, and it's not something I should be so proud to talk about. But I was like, Iowa State, yep. Like, I'm going to Iowa State, and everyone's like, what? Like, what's Iowa?
Well, the thing about it is when I came to visit you, your school's culture was incredible. I thought it was exactly what you were looking for, like picturesque, very sporty college school. But I just remember driving to Ames. So, like, you fly into Des Moines, and Des Moines is a big city.
Yeah.
And then you start driving out of Des Moines, and then you're, like, on this 5-lane freeway. There's nobody on the freeway at all. Not
2-lane.
No, but but like
different
right when
parts. You're right.
But there was nobody on the freeway, and then you start seeing cows everywhere, and then you start seeing, like, cornfields. I don't even. And
the time of year you would visit me was November, so fall was like starting to go away. I will say the Midwest is stunning in the summer and beginning of fall because there's so much greener. I think that's one thing that gave me so much mental happiness, like seeing all the greenery compared to the concrete jungle that we live in. So once that difficult conversation had to be had, it was, like you mentioned before, the part that separated Iowa State and Michigan State was the opportunity at Iowa State was not in question. I knew that the competitiveness wasn't going to be so high that all the opportunities I wanted were going to be accessible, like you mentioned. And that ended up being everything. That sold me, and it was a financially smart decision for the situation I was in. And so obviously I had to say goodbye to Michigan State. I fully dove into what Iowa State was, which, funny enough, the acceptance letter for Iowa State is like, you get an email video, you're emailed a video of a lady at a news desk, like, this just in, Mary has been accepted to Iowa. And looking back, it's like, how funny that was the way I was accepted, because it ended up being exactly what I do, like I did out of college. But overall, yeah, the sacrifices that had to go into it weren't easy, and Iowa State was everything that I could have imagined and more. And I will say, to the pride I have, like, I think I just am a pride. Yeah. When I am prideful, I really love to be prideful. I.e., like, how excited I was about my high school, and I made that clear in my commencement speech. Well, today I say no other school could have given me what Iowa State gave me, because I was sports director of the radio station. I was involved at every level, and I was a significant part at every level of Cyclones.tv, athletic communications, just the newspaper. All of those aspects were I was heavily involved in. And who knows if that would have been the case at USC or a Michigan State, and it was quite the journey.
Yeah, it gave you all the tools you needed and the opportunities you needed to get that experience early on, which especially in your industry is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What different experiences we had, but we landed exactly where we should have been. And I truly believe that.
Created our own success.
Well, speaking of creating success, setting resolutions for 2022, and just things to improve our lives. I don't know how many you have or what you have in mind, but lay it out.
I have two. I have one of them is more kind of a big idea, and the second one I would say is definitely more concrete. So the first one is really, it's just to worry a little bit less about what people think of me.
Nice.
And you actually kind of touched on this earlier when you were talking about your college experience and, the importance of the people around you being excited about what you're doing.
Yeah.
But having the self-awareness and the confidence to just be confident in your own decisions and to know this is right for me and this is what I know will lead to my ultimate success and happiness.
Another thing is just something that feels so weird to think about when applying it to yourself. But when people say, some people are just not going to like you. Yeah. It's like when you hear that, it's like, yeah, of course. But then when you think of it as you yourself, like, what do you mean? Like, why wouldn't, like, I'm not harmful. I just hang out. Like, I'm just me. Why would people have an opinion about me that's negative?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I feel very fortunate that I am marrying Darren, because Darren is very much someone that he's like, if people don't like me, that's unfortunate, but I'm not going to, sit here and worry about it.
Or compromise any part of myself. Yeah.
And that's something for the longest time that was such like a foreign concept to me. I always thought, if somebody doesn't like me, I must be wrong. And like,
what am I doing?
Yeah. And it was very stressful. And even now that, my perspective has evolved and I'm not as worried as I was when I was so much younger about what people are thinking, I do still find that, when I'm making business presentations or even when we're recording this podcast, sometimes I'm like, did that sound weird? Like, are people going to think that's weird? And then I listen back on it and everything sounds fine. And I'm like, why was I so stressed in the first place? And it takes, ultimately, the reason that I'm setting this resolution is because it takes so much energy and just puts so much stress on your life to be constantly worrying about the impression that you're making, when really you're going to be so much happier. And I think ultimately people can feel when you're being just authentic and you're not worrying about what they're thinking. I think it just leads to just a better quality of life overall. I'm not going to be as stressed if I'm not as worried what people are thinking. And I think people appreciate authenticity. So that is the first one.
Interjecting, how can you make that a SMART goal? I minored in leadership, and we talked about SMART goals, making them specific, making them timely, and really making it achievable rather than setting a broad goal.
That's why I said this one was so general, because I still need to work out how I'm going to make that more measurable, but I think how I could probably...
I have a piece of advice after you finish what you were saying.
Yes, I think one way I can start is by picking certain situations where I know that I'm especially worried about what people are thinking, and really challenging my thought process in those specific situations to start, and then maybe start applying it to my life, moving out of those situations. But what's your advice?
As soon as you start to think something that you identify as worrying about what people think, give yourself count 1, 2, 3, and then so you're recognizing it and making an active effort to tell your brain to stop. I'm recognizing this and stop.
That's a good tip.
So you can see how frequent it is, and then see where you're at.
It's gonna be constantly counting to 3.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Because you can. It's easy just to experience it and not acknowledge that it's happening to yourself.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, I'll do that. Actually, I'll take that advice.
Okay, we'll check in next episode and see how it's working out.
I counted to 3, 857 times.
God, that would be awful.
So yeah, it's definitely something that needs work.
Then I forgot why I was counting.
Yeah.
Why do I keep counting to 3?
And then my next one, it also has something to do with our honeymoon, actually. But I want to learn conversational French. And so we're going to France for our honeymoon. That's one reason. That's why I'm motivated to do it. And I'm like, I need to learn to do it by April 2023. So that's a deadline. And when I mean conversational French, I don't need to write an essay in French. You don't
need to teach people how to speak French.
Yeah, no, I just want to be able to have conversations with people. And another reason I wanted to share this goal is because a lot of people say information is power. In my opinion, I really think communication is power. I think the ability to communicate with people effectively and to share ideas with other people and to get other people's perspectives as well is such a valuable thing. And I really admire people that can speak multiple languages, that have the ability to go to any country and speak to people and communicate. I think is such a powerful thing. And I think throughout my life, I want to, learn even more languages besides French. Right now, French is just the necessity.
Yeah, but it's most relevant at this time. That's such a great point when you're visiting a new place and you are talking, or you're visiting a place with your husband, for example. You're experiencing France from your perspective, but to be able to have a conversation with locals or people that live there, it can give you a whole new perspective on just what you're seeing. And it can make the experience more valuable and honest and like authentic to what France, for example, really is. Yeah,
and I think also, I want to do it as a sign of respect to the people that live there. I think there's a certain amount of American privilege that exists where Americans go to other countries and they expect people to speak English, know. I would love to be able to, accommodate them in their own country and speak their own language.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think, I always appreciate, too, when people come here from other countries and they learn English. I'm always so impressed because I took Spanish for 5 years, but I'm still not very good. And I'm always just so impressed when people learn another language. So I want to extend that courtesy to France when I go.
Beautiful. Your intentions behind that resolution are amazing. I took 3 semesters of French, and I tried to minor in French in college. And I'm going to count 1 to 10 in French. 1, 2, 3.
Oh my gosh. Cat?
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Nice. There's a little hesitation there.
You knew French?
I just know how to count to 5.
You know how to count?
I know very, je m'appelle Sophie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, awesome.
Very basic. I downloaded an app that's teaching me. It's called Duolingo.
I was going to ask, how are you going about this?
Yes. I downloaded Duolingo. So far, it's really great. It's just really small exercises. They have you speak into the app to make sure you're speaking correctly.
Oh, that's cool.
And
Do you pay for it?
No, you can, but there's a free version too.
Oh, wow.
You just have to watch some ads.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going well. I'll keep you posted on my progress.
Absolutely. I would love that. I really debated keeping all of my textbooks and workbooks of French.
Man.
But you move so much when you leave college and when you're in college that it was unfortunately, this $400 textbook isn't worth it. So I'm going to throw it away.
Oh, darn.
For my resolution, I think I set a lot of goals or tasks to do what's most important to me, which is advance in my career. And I had a very valuable conversation with a friend yesterday, and I realized I need to do more for my own mental health and my well-being because I work a ton, so I don't have the opportunity to really focus on myself when I'm working as much as I do. And I'm in a relationship and I live with the person that I'm dating, which can make it hard to have alone time and focus on yourself. You're just doing a lot. And the things that I value in growing my mental capacity and my overall well-being is going to therapy. Well, that's not something I'm doing at the moment, at this point in my life, because of personal reasons and just financial reasons. Yeah. I personally am not financially capable of doing that at the moment. Or, but it's something I really look forward to doing because I know there's more that I want to experience in life and certain things are holding me back. And another thing is physical, a way that I want to improve is my physical being and working out and being healthy. I eat healthy, but I want to work out and do that for myself. But the way that I see it and the way that I've always seen it is this is just another task that could potentially harm the amount of work I have to do. So it's not worth it. Why compromise my ability to work a full day and not be tired to work out in the morning? But then another way of thinking about it is the thing I struggle with is, say I have a day off and I'm waking up and I'm like, well, I'm tired right now. Why would I push myself to work out when that's not what I feel like doing? But I realize that you doing things for yourself is a commitment. So it's not always going to be easy, but in the end, you'll benefit from it because it's a commitment to yourself and you're putting yourself first and doing something for yourself that is going to make you feel better or improve your mental health or physical health and so forth. So I'm going to focus on me and do things for me, and to make that a specific goal is I'm going to commit to working out. It's tough to say how often, but Smart goals, yeah. It's tough to say how often and at what time of every day, but I'm going to make it a priority. I'll start with 4 days a week.
4 days to start? That's a lot.
I have a gym in my apartment, so what are my excuses?
Too,
I can't go downstairs.
Okay, well that's what you think.
In my apartment complex.
That's what you think is realistic.
Yeah, because the workouts that I plan to do are I have plenty of time in the morning because I don't work till 2. So it's just a matter of maximizing that time. And I know what I'm doing instead. I'm sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
In the time that I could be doing something for me that is physical.
Yeah.
It makes me feel so great in the end. It just, I really stress about being tired. Like, I don't want to be tired ever.
Yeah, same.
And working out until I get over that initial hump is going to be tiring, but hopefully in the end it'll make me more energetic and
I think
healthy.
2 things. I think those goals go great together because mind and body are one. So I think when you have a healthy body, it really benefits your mental health. I mean, just scientifically, we work with a mental health organization, and we have to do a lot of research. We do their social media, so we post a lot of facts, like fun facts about how physical health can really benefit mental health. It releases endorphins, and there's other science behind it that I'm not quite remembering, but I know for a fact that physical health is directly correlated with mental health. So those go very well together, firstly.
Perfect. That's good that's reaffirming me that this is important to commit to. Yes,
it is. And also, secondly, my fiance is very, very much passionate about the gym, and I'm not. I wasn't. I am like you. I never wanted to be tired. If I had free time, I wanted to use it to relax and to just kind of like regroup myself before I had to go do the next thing.
Exactly.
But really, when you start in a routine and you commit to a workout routine, my body started craving it. And I was like, wow, like I have so much energy right now. I want to go work out. I want to expend this energy. I want to be productive. So I think, what do they say? It takes 21 days to form a new habit. I think the first month might be tough. But I think after the first month or the first 3 weeks, though, your body will adjust and could even start to really crave it, which would be awesome.
Yeah, I had always played a sport, and then I played lacrosse in college, so I never had to. It was always a commitment, like a commitment, not to myself, to someone else and a team to work out.
Your coach would
exactly
drill into you if you didn't.
So to have that responsibility, it's something I'm learning for the first time. Kind of. I mean, I feel like people are always setting personal workout goals, and but yeah, another quick thing that I thought of while having this discussion about how important body and mind correlate, stretching. Like, I'm prone to having back pain and neck tightness.
We're so old now, Mary. Oh
things my mom complained about. I'm like, I have a knot in my back. I have a knot in my neck. All of those things. But stretching is something my mom is very physical health and clean eating. That's all very important to her, and she preaches. stretch. It's so important to move your muscles, and it will prevent so much that I'm dealing with now. Her perspective.
If you don't stretch, it can cause a lot of injuries when you're working out if you're not flexible enough.
Yeah.
And when you're older too, it creates a lot of problems if you.
Yeah, and I don't want to live a life where my neck hurts or I can't do X, Y, and Z because I am simply like just too cramped and not healthy. So I need to think about it more. I'm not going to set the resolution on the podcast, but I would like to implement stretching more. Maybe that can go hand in hand with starting off. Well, I was always told you shouldn't do stationary stretches before working out.
To be warm.
Yeah, so maybe afterward I can do a set of movement stretches before I work out, and then afterward I can really focus on the neck and the legs. And
maybe you could do yoga.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. I have a mat. There's yoga studios around me. I just got to do it.
Well, during the pandemic, I watched all sorts of workout videos, and there's yoga videos on YouTube. You can do that.
Yeah, that's very, very valuable advice. So the most exciting thing happened. By the time you're listening to this, it didn't happen the day of, but today, you went dress shopping for the first time.
Yes.
You kind of, like, obviously scheduled it because I was coming home to California, and you're maid of honor, so it was a very highly anticipated, meaningful experience that we were looking forward to. Your mom and your grandma were there for the experience and was also supposed to be your fiance's mom, but the bridal shop had a different plan in mind.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the whole point of me planning my wedding dress appointment for today was because Mary was going to be here, and she's, very rarely in Southern California, and I was like, okay, we're going to capitalize on this time, and we're going to go wedding dress shopping while my maid of honor's here. But like you said, the bridal shop had different ideas.
Which to no fault of their own, because we're in, COVID-19 is not something that you can blame a business for having to deal with.
This is actually my first wedding experience that was affected by COVID, you could say.
Oh, yeah.
So
because you already have your venue. And
yes, we already have our venue. I didn't have any problems with COVID there, except for the fact that we had to book it so far out. But basically what happened is the bridal shop called me yesterday, and they said...
The day before,
and they said, so unfortunately due to COVID, we're super understaffed right now. And we don't have enough employees to staff the amount of appointments that are booked for tomorrow. So we had to cancel they started with, we had to cancel your appointment. And I was like, and she's like, can we reschedule for another day? Like a Thursday or something? And I was like...
I leave Wednesday.
I was like, my maid of honor leaves Wednesday, and also I have to work. Like, no, I can't come on Thursday. And then I asked her...
You took work off for this day.
Yes, I took work off so that I could spend the day with Mary and have my wedding dress appointment, and also record our podcast. And I asked her, I said, okay, is there anything for Monday, for tomorrow? And she's like, oh, there actually is. And it was the only slot available. It was 10:45 in the morning. We went, and like Mary said, because we had to book that time, my fiance's mother was supposed to be there, but because it changed to 10:45 in the morning, she couldn't make it anymore, which was unfortunate. But I assured her that there's going to be lots of other fittings and stuff in the future that she'll be able to attend, which is great. And it's especially exciting because I did say yes to the dress today.
Saying those words, what was her position? Like the lady that helped you with all of your dresses? I mean,
what was
her title?
Oh, I have no idea.
A
dress assistant.
A dress assistant said, so it's time to say it. Sophie, are you saying yes to the dress? And it was just like, yes!
I know. Oh my gosh.
An amazing experience.
Yes, very picturesque. It was definitely everything I hoped it would be. They were so great about taking well, first of all, I should mention that they had me fill out like this whole long survey about what I wanted, what I didn't want, what my budget was, pictures that I had seen from the internet if I wanted to include any. And they did such a great job of taking all that information, and by the time we got there, they had pulled like 4 or 5 dresses for me that they thought I would really like based on my answers. And what's so interesting is, you go in there, you see what dresses they pull, and they're not exactly what you're looking or what you had imagined. So you start, thinking of other dresses they could pull, or looking at
there were every dress. It was like, I like this part of the dress, but I don't like this part, or this isn't what I'm looking for. Because you did go in with an inspo picture that you, in hindsight, weren't trying to get exact, but that was what you had in the back of your mind. Like, this is the general style I want. Yeah,
and I do recommend to anybody who's going dress shopping is, I think it's good to have specifics in mind, like definitely what you don't want, a general style you're going for. I think that's all great, but I would try to have an open mind, or as open as possible, because, things aren't going to fit you exactly how you think. Certain styles aren't going to look exactly the same on you as they did on the model.
Even if it's a stunning dress for the picture you saw on Pinterest or Instagram, like, that doesn't mean that exact style, it's gorgeous and it's show-stopping, but will it complement your exact body type?
And personality as well.
Exactly.
Like, there was this one dress, I guess I'm okay with saying this, it was super foofy and ball gowny, and I saw it and I thought I want like a statement dress, so maybe this is it. And I tried it on and I was like, this isn't me. Like, it's too foofy. I don't feel like myself in it. So ultimately the dress I picked, I feel like, is very me. And it's just crazy to think that I know the dress that I'm getting married in. It's a very surreal experience.
And the process made it so much better. Like you said, you were trying on dresses, and then you knew which one you wanted, but it was a matter of like trying on 7 dresses and then going back and going through that favorites pile. Some of them you took out by the end of it. You were like, okay, I know that's not a favorite. I know this isn't, because you had a lot of favorites. You only had 2 ones you didn't like.
I know.
And then it was the craziest thing to witness, because in a positive way, you tried on one of the top dresses and you were like, it's so gorgeous. It was one that I thought was gorgeous, not necessarily like the best one that you had available to you, but it was just one that I found stunning, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, it's a great style. And then you liked it, and it fit you well and all of that. And then the next one, circling back to when you had already tried on before, it was like immediate after all of what you had seen, after trying that on to begin with. You knew, like, that was the dress. And to see the confidence and to know, to see how happy it made you, it was, you couldn't have left a bridal shop or, like, a dress try-on any better, because there was no hesitation. There was no, like, shoot, I really liked all 3, but I had to pick one, and I picked this one. It was like this, all things considered. We tried on every style, all the types of things, different things I wanted to see on me, and this was it.
Yeah, and what's crazy is, like I said before, I went in with such a specific vision. So when I did try the dress on for the first time, the one that I ended up picking, I really liked it, but I was like, it's not exactly what I pictured. And after I try on like 7 dresses after that.
Yeah.
When I went back to go try on that same dress again, after I had tried on so many, I was really excited to put it on again. And that's when I knew, I'm like, I think this is the one, because I'm not as excited to try on any of the other ones as I am for this one. And seeing myself in it, I felt like a bride. And especially with the veil and everything, it's true what they say about the veil. It adds so much. And I do want to give Pebbles Bridal in Orange County such a big round of applause, because that was one of the dresses that they pulled for me before I even got there. So they did such a great job just hearing what I wanted and really diving into their collection and figuring out exactly what would make me happy. So,
and even given the appointment situation, they opened early, right? Or they made sure that they made time for you. Yeah. So that was great. So I'm trying to remember what I thought of while you were talking. The dress, well, I'll start with this. The dresses throughout, one thing I'm going to take away for one day when I'm trying on a dress for my wedding. I didn't even know how to say that. But that day I'll know this dress doesn't have to be perfect as is. Mm-hmm. You were very open to this I would want to get rid of, or this I want to asking questions like, can I do this? Mm-hmm. Which my initial thinking before seeing how you dealt with it would be, if I'm going to spend this much money on a dress, I'm not going to buy a dress that I have to do alterations to. Like, I need it to be as is. Like, that's what I'm paying for. But you have specific things you like, and you don't have all the time and money in the world to go to every store in the world or in your city. So that was something I would recommend to others is be okay with the alterations and knowing what you like. But
yeah, and in the end, if you have to do some really dramatic changes to the dress, maybe consider looking elsewhere or finding other dresses. But I think I'm doing some very, very small alterations just to fit my style a little better. And I remembered what I was going to say. So in your case, you went in with a certain material that you wanted. Mm-hmm. And there were all the dresses in the world that didn't have the material, except for like 3 or 4 dresses in the bridal shop. 3 of them.
So the options were limited with that specific material, but you ended up getting that material in the end.
Yes, I did.
And I think it is so stunning, and it was worth it to hold on to that and not get distracted by things that you might have unknowingly been compromising for, given the lack of. But it ended up so great, and it was such an exciting experience. It was mesmerizing, surreal, and now the only negative that comes of it is having to wait 16 months to be able to even see it, or not see it, but wear it.
I know my mom kept having to tell me, okay, Sophie, you have to take it off now.
Yeah, that was funny. Once she had decided, I mean, they only allot so much time for the appointments, and Sophie had already gone over it, so it's just, she was just in the corner, kind of like while people were talking, just looking and like admiring it and probably imagining like all the things you want to do and make up and the day of, and your mom said,
okay,
Sophie, it's time to take it off now, sweetie. And I was just like laughing to myself, like, I'm not going to tell her, so I'm just going to. Someone's going to have to tell you.
I'm glad she did, because usually I'm very aware of I tried to be as aware as possible. I kept asking her, I'm like, how much time do I have left? And she was very nice about being, we'll make time for you. But at that point, I wasn't thinking about her time at all. Yeah. So I was just like, if nobody told me, I would have stayed in that dress for like 20 more minutes.
And your mom is amazing. Your grandma is a beautiful, amazing woman, and it was so great to experience with them personally. And the one dynamic I saw that I think I'm sure a lot of people experience, a lot of brides experience, is your mom having an opinion, or anyone, even I could have had more of an opinion about what you're choosing, and you did a phenomenal job about just making light of it, like, I see where you're coming from, but not for me. I know what I want. It's my wedding. And the way you were assertive and confident in what you wanted, and didn't take anyone's opinion personally or get annoyed, was a way of acting that I think a lot of people should take note of, because that was it was just fun. But
and that's funny. I mean, that is something
everyone has different styles.
Yeah, totally. And I get that. I know I expected my mom to have an opinion, of course.
You know her so well, so and it was fun. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, totally. But that's the thing, is I've mentioned this before, is that's one really great thing about Darren is I'm learning from him how to really be confident in myself, and to sometimes, not all the time, but to sometimes put myself first and be like, that's great, I appreciate that, but today's about me. Yeah. And learning that it's okay for every once in a while for that to be that to be what the day is about. So
can't please everyone, and
yeah,
on your wedding day, who else needs to be pleased other than you? So it was an amazing experience, and you said yes to the dress. So your wedding venue is picked. You said yes to the dress, and now it's just more fun.
Yeah, more fun and more booking of vendors. So there is definitely still a lot to be planned, and I'm sure I will keep everyone updated in the coming months. There's so much to do.
Well, that'll do it for the Processing Podcast, episode 4, our first ever live, in-person, in Southern California episode. And I think everyone can agree that this was a tad more easy flowing
I know.
than what it is on Zoom.
I wish it could be like this every single time. It would be so amazing, but...
And I learned a lot about you, and it was fun to talk about certain things because we all experience similar things in our lives, but to talk them out and process them is so valuable because honestly, for me personally, it's hard to remember exactly what my process was in high school. I was looking back at old tweets that I made or like Facebook posts or having a conversation with my dad to kind of jog my memory, like, oh yeah, that's what happened, huh? That's crazy. So talking about this is awesome. So I encourage people to reflect on their own experiences and yeah. So that's it. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks. See you guys in 2 weeks.